Hello, you guys. This is Air here, and welcome to the 24th episode of Death Row Executions. Today's story is on convicted killer Karla Faye Tucker, who was executed on February 3rd, 1998 in Huntsville, Texas, for the double murder of Jerry Lynn Dean and his lover Deborah Thornton. Thank you to everyone who interacted with the channel and suggested her in the comments. I would also like to give a shout out to Ohio Susan for becoming a patron. Thank you for supporting and believing in the channel. Karla Faye Tucker was born on November 18, 1959 in Houston, Texas. She was the youngest of three girls and grew up very close to her sisters. Her parents had an unstable marriage and ended up divorcing when the girls were fairly young. During the chaotic divorce, Karla learned that her mother had had an affair on her father, and she was a result of that affair. Her mother, Carolyn, took care of her three girls without their father present, but instead of raising them and being involved in their lives, she began prostituting and was also a rock band groupie who would frequently travel with and follow popular bands like the Eagles, Allman Brothers Band, and the Marshall Tucker Band. She and her older sister started hanging around the wrong people, and they all began smoking cigarettes together. By age 12, it progressed to more serious drugs, and she also became sexually active. Karla was 14 years old when she decided to drop out of high school and follow in her mother's footsteps of being a traveling prostitute. Her mother was the one who encouraged this behavior and actually brought 14-year-old Karla to a place filled with men and taught her the art of becoming a call girl. A couple of years later, in 1975, at the age of 16, Karla married a mechanic by the name of Stephen Griffin, but that marriage did not last long and they ended up getting a divorce. By the time Karla turned 20, she had stopped traveling with her mom and began to hang around bikers. Eventually, she met and started hanging around biker couple Sean Dean and her husband Jerry Dean. They became very close friends and ended up introducing Karla to their friend Daniel Garrett. The next year, by age 21, Karla and 35-year-old Daniel began a relationship. Karla, Daniel, Sean, and Jerry remained friends, and they continued a life of partying and drugs. 2 years later, at age 23, Karla was still in a relationship with Daniel. Around May 30th, 1983, Karla confided in a friend by the name of James Liebrant and told him that she wanted to intimidate Jerry Dean, steal his motorcycle, and kill him. 2 weeks later, on Monday, June 13th, 1983, they decided that it was time to put Karla's idea into fruition. Sean and Jerry had recently lost their apartment keys, and unbeknownst to them, Karla had stolen them. Karla, Daniel, and James were high on marijuana and heroin and eventually made it to Sean and Jerry's apartment complex at around 3 a.m. that morning. James went to look for Jerry's El Camino motorcycle to steal, while Karla and Daniel entered the apartment with a set of keys Karla had taken. They made it to the master bedroom, and Karla sat on top of Jerry, who was laying in his bed. Jerry grabbed Karla by her arms, and the two began to struggle. Daniel intervened by grabbing a hammer and striking Jerry on the head multiple times. After the beating, he left the room to go help James with stealing motorcycle parts. Karla was left in the room alone, and she was frustrated because Jerry kept making a gurgling sound. The blows that he had received from Daniel caused his head to get unhinged from his neck and fluid to build up in his breathing passageway, which caused the gurgling sounds. Karla was frustrated with the noises, and she grabbed a 3-foot pickaxe and started to hit Jerry with it. She struck Jerry 28 times, and she said that with each blow, it would give her sexual gratification and she would have multiple orgasms. At one point, James entered the room and he saw Karla trying to take the axe out of Jerry's body by using her foot on him as leverage, and when she pulled the bloody axe out of his body and held it over her head, she smiled at James and then swung the axe into Jerry again. James left the room and Daniel came back into the room and witnessed Karla delivering the final blow. Daniel left the room once again while Karla stayed in the bedroom, and that is when she noticed a woman by the name of Deborah Ruth Thornton. Deborah was at the wrong place at the wrong time and had just recently moved to Houston, Texas to stay with her brother. The night before, she had an argument with her husband, so she went to a party and stayed the night at Jerry's house. She was hiding under a stack of blankets by the wall and tried to stay quiet, but as soon as she was spotted, Karla swung the pickaxe at Deborah, grazing her elbow. The two women began to struggle, and that's when Daniel returned to the room to help Karla. They both used the axe on Deborah, and she finally begged for them to hurry and kill her. Daniel took the pickaxe and aimed straight for her throat, killing her. There are other accounts that say Karla administered the final blow into Deborah's heart. It was later reported that the only reason they decided to kill her was because Jerry had screamed both of their names and they wanted to eliminate her as a witness. After the murders, Karla and Daniel stole Jerry's truck, wallet, and motorcycle and stored it at Doug Garrett's house, who was actually Daniel's brother. They bragged about the murder for over a month and were very excited with what they were able to get away with. The very next morning after the murders, Jerry's coworker was waiting for him outside to carpool to work, and after waiting too long, he decided to go to Jerry's actual apartment to see what was going on. He entered the apartment, and that is when he found the dead bodies of Deborah and Jerry. Karla and Daniel were not arrested until 5 weeks after the murders, and not because of any evidence left behind, because they kept bragging about the crime, and two people in particular went to the police: Karla's sister, Carrie Weeks, and Daniel's brother, Doug. Doug went to the police and he had a hidden microphone attached to him, and he was able to secretly record about 90 minutes of Karla and Daniel discussing the murder. Karla and Daniel were both charged for the murders in September 1983, but tried separately in Harris County, Texas. Despite confessing to the crimes, Karla pled not guilty from the advice of her lawyers. She was initially charged with the murders of both Deborah and Jerry, but after she testified in court against Daniel, she was only charged with the murder of Jerry. On April 19, 1984, a jury found Karla Tucker guilty of capital murder, and the trial court sentenced her to death by lethal injection. Karla attempted to file a motion to the courts for a new trial, a stay of execution, and appeals, but was continuously denied. She spent her time on death row at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Texas. One day while on death row, she went to a prison ministry program, and after the service was over, she stole a Bible and took it to her cell. She began reading, and she said it was the first time she cried in years, and that day she accepted God, and it was also the first time she had acknowledged her crime and asked for forgiveness. She continued going to her ministry classes, and 12 years after being sent to death row, she married her prison minister, Reverend Dana Lane Brown, in 1992, and in 1995 they had a wedding ceremony within the prison. When it was nearing her execution day, she wrote a letter to former Governor of Texas, George W. Bush, for a stay of execution. I will be uploading a separate video reading Karla's letter to George Bush, but ultimately he rejected her request. He made a statement and said, "Karla Faye Tucker has acknowledged that she is guilty of a horrible crime. She was convicted and sentenced by a jury of her peers. The role of the state is to enforce our laws and to make sure all individuals are treated fairly under those laws. The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore, I will not grant a 30-day delay. May God bless Karla Faye Tucker, and may God bless her victims and their families." 38-year-old Karla was sentenced to die on February 3, 1998 by lethal injection. On February 2nd, Karla was transported by aircraft to Huntsville unit to be executed the next day. For her last meal, she had a garden salad with ranch dressing, a peach, and a banana. She selected 8 people to witness her execution, which included Deborah Thornton's husband Richard and his 2 stepchildren, and Deborah's brother Ronald Carlson. Deborah's husband and children were 4 before Karla being executed, and Deborah's brother Ronald actually forgave Karla after visiting her on death row and opposed her execution. Her sister Carrie, who helped police in getting her arrested, was also there, along with her friend Jackie. The final person there was her minister husband, Dana Brown. When asked if she had any last words, Karla said, "Yes, sir, I would like to say to all of you, the Thornton family and the Jerry Deans family, that I am so sorry. I hope God will give you peace with this." She then looked at her husband and said, "Baby, I love you." She looked at Ronald Carlson and said, "Ron, give Peggy a hug for me." She looked at the whole crowd and said, "Everybody has been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I'm going to be face to face with Jesus now. Warden Baggett, thank all of you so much. You have been so good to me. I love all of you very much. I will see you all when you get there. I will wait for you." The execution began at 6:37 p.m., and as the chemicals were entering her body, she began to groan, and her sister Carrie cried out, "I love you, Karla." Also in the witness area was Deborah's husband, Richard, who said, "Here she comes, baby doll. She's all yours," when the drugs ran through Karla's body. When she was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m., 8 minutes after the injection started, he said, "The world is a better place." Karla spent 14 years on death row, and after her death, she was buried at the Forest Park Lawndale Cemetery in Houston, Texas. And now for discussion and question time. A televangelist by the name of Pat Robertson did an interview and said, "If Bush lets this sweet woman of God die, he's a man who shows no mercy." Karla's demeanor and personality did not just change after she went on death row. I'm pretty sure her friends thought she was sweet and nice as well. Being sweet and nice has nothing to do with having a sick mindset and getting aroused by killing someone with an axe. I think a lot of people get confused by looks and get fooled. We can look at the reports of Catholic priests hurting young boys, and I feel like a lot of professional criminals also use looks or a type of profession to their advantage when taking advantage of other people. So even people who have committed murder and have been released early on good behavior only to get out and commit murder again, how can we truly know someone is reformed when these same people can manipulate and pretend to be friendly when they aren't in prison and commit crimes? Pedophiles can be nice and sweet. It doesn't mean I trust them. And this is not to say that she did or did not deserve the death penalty, but just the topic of trusting a killer because they are quote unquote nice. And I question, why is it that there is more of an outcry with a criminal who was deemed beautiful, handsome, or very attractive? I feel that when the criminal is classified as ugly and nasty, people don't defend that person as much. So why are we easier on more attractive people? Thank you guys for watching, and give the video a like for me if you enjoyed it.